Janet has to make sure John gets plenty of red meat, otherwise he goes all floppy. Outside the butcher's shop, Janet remembers she has to buy some parcel tape from the post office. "I'm going to the post office, John," she says. "If you wait here and keep out of mischief, I'll buy you a sherbet fountain." Do you like sherbet fountains? John does. Sometimes John can eat a whole one without coughing sherbet all over the furniture. Clever John. While John is waiting, he stands outside the butcher's shop and watches through the window. Mrs. Forrest, the butcher's wife, sees John outside and invites him in. Kind Mrs. Forrest. "Hello, Mrs. Forrest," says John. "Hello, John," says Mrs. Forrest. "What fun." Mrs. Forrest says, "Oh, I've had such a busy morning, John. I must have a sit-down." Mrs. Forrest is from Glasgow. See the deep-fried Daily Record.
From Glasgow?
John says, "Can I help behind the counter, please?" "That's very kind," says Mrs. Forrest. "I've been on my feet all morning." See John looking at the sharp knives. John says, "Can I cut up some meat like a proper butcher?" Mrs. Forrest says, "As long as you're careful, you must put on an apron and a hat." John is very careful. Takes some bones out of a joint of meat, then cuts up some special steak for Mrs. Wiseman. Soon John sees Janet coming back to meet him. He thanks Mrs. Forrest, washes his hands, and runs out to meet Janet. "Hello, Janet," says John. "Hello, John. Did you behave yourself?" says Janet. "Yes," says John. "Mrs. Forrest invited me into the shop. She let me pretend to be the butcher's boy. She said the way I handled the meat was remarkable. She said I was a natural, and then I showed Mrs. Wiseman how easily I could fill it. Can I have my sherbet fountain now?" Can you make someone look like an Egyptian mummy with a roll of parcel tape? Janet can.